Hey gang, and welcome back. Just a reminder, you can now use the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, at flipsidegaming.com. You'll get 10% off orders over $10 and help with the channel at the same time. Thank you all for joining me, and this week we have another EDH game. Before we get into it, I'm sorry if you hear any construction work in the background. If you're from Montreal, you'll know that we have two seasons, winter and construction, and unfortunately there's no snow, so it's not winter. This week I am playing my Trostani deck and keep a hand with Green Sun Zenith, Temple of Plenty, Sungrass Prairie, a Forest, Zendikar Resurgence, Giant Adaphage, and Loaming Shaman. Brian is playing Ghave, and also keeps a Sungrass Prairie, an Urborg, Deathreap Ritual, Yavimaya Sapherd, Soul Ring, and Harsh Sustenance. Jameson has his Sen Triplets deck again, and keeps a hand with Enigma Sphinx, Soul Manipulation, Vindicate, Master Transmuter, Expedition Map, Island, and Skycloud Expanse. Jeff is rocking his Alesha deck and keeps a hand with Tajik, Solemn, Wrath of God, Fiend Hunter, Blood Crypt, and 2 mountains. Jeff wins the die roll and starts us off. Jeff plays a tapped Blood Crypt and passes. Brian plays an Urborg and casts a Soul Ring. Jameson plays an Island and casts an Expedition Map. I play Temple of Plenty, scrying the top card and keeping it on top. Jeff plays a Mountain and passes to Brian. Brian plays a Sungrass Prairie and casts the Yavimaya Sapherd. He gains a Saproling token and passes. Jameson plays a Skycloud Expanse and cracks his map to find a land and put it to his hand. I play a Command Tower and cast Altar of Dementia. Jeff plays a Mountain and brings out Alesha. Brian casts a Deathreap Ritual in his main phase and passes, not attacking. Jameson plays a Command Tower and vindicates Alesha. At the end of Jameson's turn, Brian draws from the Deathreap Ritual trigger. I play a Forest and I pass my turn. Jeff draws a card and casts Cathartic Reunion. He pitches Anger and Anafenza, drawing 3 cards. Jeff then plays an Urborg as well, and taps it to cast Viscera Seer. Brian plays a Swamp and casts Ghave. Moving to combat, he sings the Saproling at Jeff, who doesn't block and takes 1. Jameson plays a Reliquary Tower and casts a Trophy Mage. With the spell in the stack, I cycle Secluded Step. The Mage resolves, and Jameson grabs a Shimmermere. I draw for my turn, and I play my own Sungrass Prairie. There seems to be a lot of overlapping lands in this game, and I then cast Green Sun Zenith, where X is 3, to go and find Wood Elves. I go and grab a Temple Garden, having it come into play tapped, and I pass my turn. Jeff draws and casts a Soul Ring. He then casts a Solemn Simulacrum to go and grab a Plains. Jeff then moves to combat and swings a Solemn at me, as the Solemn has haste thanks to the Anger in Jeff's graveyard. I take 2, and Jeff passes to Brian. Brian casts Reap and Sow to find a land. He goes to find a Command Tower from his library and puts it onto the field. Moving to combat, he swings the Saproling at Jameson. Jameson blocks, and Brian moves to his end step after combat, drawing from the Deathreap Ritual Morbid trigger. Jameson plays a Cascading Cataracts for his land for turn, and this is honestly the first time I've ever seen this card. He then casts a Shimmermere and passes, but at the end of Jameson's main phase, Brian makes a token with Ghave and sacrifices it back to Ghave, which allows him to draw again from the Ritual trigger at the end of turn. I cycle a Tranquil Thicket in my main phase and play a tapped Canopy Vista. I then bring out Trostani, and I pass my turn. Jeff casts Pia and Kiran Nalaar in his main phase, gaining 2 Thopter tokens. He then passes to Brian. Brian plays a Temple of the False God, and he casts Journey to Eternity on the Yavimaya Sapherd. Brian then sacrifices a Sapherd to Ghave, and returns the Sapherd, gaining a Saproling token. This allows Journey to Eternity to flip, revealing Atzal, Cave of Eternity, and it hits the field. Brian then casts a Brawn, and moves to his end step, drawing from the Ritual trigger. Jameson plays a tap Sunken Hollow for his land for turn, and brings out a Master Transmuter. He passes, and Brian sacrifices Brawn at the end of Jameson's second main phase to Ghave, giving Ghave a counter and drawing at the end of turn. I play a Riftstone Portal, which is often better suited to be in my graveyard than on the field, but it does help me cast Zendikar Resurgence. Jeff draws and casts a Diabolic Tutor in his main phase, grabbing his library and finding a card. He casts a Darksteel Plate and moves to combat. Jeff swings his 2 Thopters at me, and I take 2. Brian plays a Vesuva and has it come in as a copy of Jameson's Reliquary Tower. He then drops in a Chroma's Memorial, and I muse how great it would be to have something like Vindicate in my deck to deal with it, Jameson. Moving to combat, Brian swings the token and the Sapherd at Jeff for 3, and Ghave at Jameson for 6 commander damage. Jameson activates the Transmuter in his main phase, bouncing her to his hand and exchanging her with a Memnarch. He then pays to steal the Memorial, and Brian responds to it by making a token with Ghave and sacrificing it. Jeff decides he's going to sacrifice his Solemn as well to draw a card, and I also get on the sacrificing train, milling myself for 1 as I sacrifice the Wood Elves to the altar. Jameson then passes, and at the end of turn, Brian draws 1. I tap 4 lands to make 8 mana in my main phase, and I cast a Terastodon. I blow up the Memorial, the Ritual, and Atzal Cave of Eternity. I gain 9 life as the table gets some elephants and draw a card from the Resurgence. Before ending my turn though, I cast Mirari's Wake and I pass to Jeff. Jeff plays a Dragon Skull Summit and casts a Necrotic Sliver, which he sacrifices to its own ability to destroy a permanent. Brian suggests hitting the Memnarch, which is a threat, but Jeff isn't super thrilled with my having at least 21 mana on my next turn. He hits my Mirari's Wake, and then completely destroys my immersion into the game by equipping 1 Darksteel Plate onto both Pia and Kirin Nalaar. Brian taps 3 to cast Maelstrom Pulse in his main phase, blowing up the Memnarch. He then brings in a Spikeweaver and passes to Jameson. Jameson casts a Treasure Mage in his main phase and goes to find Mike's Scintillatus. He puts it to hand and passes turn. I cast a Rock's Faithmender in my main phase, gaining 10 life as it enters and drawing a card. I then move to cast Rishkar's Expertise, which Jameson quickly counters. I follow up with a V2 Ghazi Guildmage, drawing from the Resurgence trigger and gaining 4 life. I move to combat and swing Terracidon at Brian, but Brian removes a counter from the Spikeweaver to fog combat. Jeff plays a Sacred Foundry untapped, taking 2. He pays 5 to bring back Alesha and moves to equip her with the now stretched out plate. Jeff moves to combat and swings Alesha at me and pays 2 for Alesha's on attack trigger to bring back Solemn. Jeff grabs a basic and I block Alesha with Trostani and Solemn with the Faithmender. Jeff passes, but at the end of turn, Brian makes 2 Saproling tokens with Ghave. Brian counts up his mana and taps the temple to make 2 more Saproling tokens with Ghave. He then uses his remaining 8 mana to cast a Craterhoof Behemoth. This pumps his board as it enters, and he moves to combat, swinging all of the tokens that can attack at Jameson and the rest of the creatures at me. Jameson dies, even with blocking, and I decide to risk it for the biscuit and take the full hit, dropping to 2 and taking 15 commander damage. In my main phase, I cast Green Warden of Marasa because I don't have to worry about Jameson messing with my spells. I gain 8 life as it enters, returning Rishkar's Expertise and drawing a card. I then cast Rishkar's Expertise, drawing 9 cards, and I get to cast Momentous Fall with the Expertise trigger. I sacrifice Terracidon, gaining another 9 life, and drawing 9 more cards. Thankfully, I find my own Reliquary Tower, which I play as my land for turn, and I pass to Jeff. Jeff casts a Falconwrath Noble in his main phase and moves to combat. He swings everything but the Seer at Brian, and he pays 2 for the Alesha attack trigger and brings back Anafenza. Brian blocks Alesha and Solemn with his 2 untapped tokens and takes 8. Jeff also gets 2 noble triggers from the tokens dying and drains me for 2. In his second main phase, he sacrifices one of the Thopters to scry, draining me for 1. He bottoms the card. He does it again, draining me for another 1, and bottoms the card again. He then sacrifices Pia and Kirin, draining me again and scrying. He then does the same with Solemn, drawing a card and then scrying and drains me for 1. He finishes off by sacrificing the Seer, draining me again. Jeff then asks how many creatures are on the board, and that's never a good sign. He follows up with a Wrath of God, and getting tired of being drained, I use a Path to Exile to remove the Noble before the board gets wiped. I also cast Nature's Claim from the extra mana I have floating from tapping my land, and I blow up Brian's Soul Ring, giving him 4 life. I then sacrifice my Green Warden to mill myself for 5, and exile it to return Mirari's Wake to my hand. I then sacrifice the Guildmage to mill myself for 2, and then mill 1 as I sacrifice the Rock's Faithmender, and the spell resolves. Brian plays an exotic Orchard for his land for turn, and pays 6 to cast a Pathbreaker Ebek. Brian then casts a Death Spore Thallid, and passes turn. I play an untapped Sunpetal Grove for my land for turn, and I cast a Mirari's Wake. I then tap 1 land and float 3 mana, using 2 to cast Elvish Visionary, drawing on cast and as it enters. I then tap another land, floating 3 more mana, and cast Wall of Omens, drawing again on cast and as it enters, and still having 2 floating mana. I then cast Harmonize, drawing 3 more cards, because apparently I only like to draw lands. Jeff plays a Phyrexian Tower as his land for turn, and moves to combat. He swings Alesha at Brian, and pays 2 for Alesha's on attack trigger. He brings the Sliver back, attacking Brian, and Brian just takes the hit for 5. In his second main phase, Jeff casts Tajik, and then drops a Painseer. He then pays to sacrifice the Necrotic Sliver again, and targets my Mirari's Wake once more. I sacrifice my Elvish Visionary to mill myself for 2, and the Wake then bites the dust. Brian puts a Spore counter on his Thallid and recasts Ghave in his main phase, moving to combat. He swings the Thallid and Ebek at me, the Ebek triggers on the swing, and I'm suddenly facing 14 power worth of damage. I block the Thallid, and I drop down to 2 again. For my turn, I recast Trostani in my main phase, and I draw a card. I then tap 3 lands for 6 mana, and I cast Sun Titan, gaining 6 as it enters, and drawing a card. I bring back my Wood Elves, gaining another point of life, and going to find an untapped forest. With the forest now, I'm able to cast Woodfall Primus, gaining 6 as it enters, drawing a card, and blowing up Jeff's Phyrexian Tower. I then play a forest for my land for turn, and I pass to Jeff. Jeff pays 6 mana to cast a duplicant who enters and targets my Woodfall Primus. With the trigger on the stack though, I sacrifice the Primus to my altar, milling myself for 6 and gaining 5 life as it comes back with Persist. I also get to blow up one of Jeff's mountains for good measure and to teach him a lesson for targeting my stuff. Moving to combat, Jeff swings everything at Brian again. As he's attacked with at least 2 other creatures, Tajik's Battalion ability triggers and he gains +5/+5. Jeff also pays 2 to bring back Pia and Kieran Nalaar, gaining 2 more Thopter tokens. Before moving to blockers though, Brian removes 2 counters from Ghave to make 2 Saproings and chumps Alesha and Tajik, taking 6 from the remaining unblocked creatures. Brian draws for his turn and he casts Overrun in his main phase. He also remembers to put the Spore counter on the Thalid and moves to combat, swinging everything at me. This triggers his Ibek, giving all of his creatures trample and +6/+6. I put the Sun Titan, Woodfall Primus, and Trostani in front of the attackers and drop to 1 because of trample damage. I play a forest for my turn and I recast Trostani. I then drop a Thragtusk, gaining 5 life from its Enter the Battlefield trigger and 3 life from Trostani. I also get to draw a card. Now that I'm out of immediate danger, I cast a Karmic Guide, gaining 2 life as it enters and bringing back Terastodon, gaining a further 9 life. I blow up only my Riftstone portal, giving myself an Elephant token and gaining another 3 life. It's at this point that Jeff realizes he could have taken me out with Pia and Kieran. With nothing else, I pass to Jeff. On Jeff's turn, when he untaps, his Painseer triggers and Jeff reveals a mountain off the top. He takes no damage and puts it to his hand before drawing for turn. Jeff then drops a Swamp and sacrifices Duplicant to Pia and Kieran to deal 2 damage to my Karmic Guide. I sacrifice it in response to the target being put on it and mill myself for 2. Jeff then moves to cast Utter End and targets my Altar of Dementia. Not wanting to lose it, I cast Sundering Growth to destroy it and populate my Elephant token, gaining another 3 life as the token enters. Jeff then moves to combat and swings Alesha and Tajik at me and the Painseer at Brian. Tajik gets his Battalion trigger, and Jeff brings back the Duplicant with his Alesha trigger, targeting my Terastodon. My lovely elephant gets exiled, but I'm still able to block the Tajik with my Wood Elves and put my Thragtusk in front of the now 9/9 Duplicant. I take 3 from Alesha, but with Thragtusk dying, I get to put another Beast token onto the field, and I gain 3 life. Brian puts his 3rd Spore counter on the Thalid, and removes 3 in his main phase to make a Saproling. He plays a Cavern of Souls, naming Fungus, and casts a Coat of Arms. He then pays another 5 to cast Seedborn Muse, but as Brian declares the beginning of his combat step, I use Unexpectedly Absent, where X is 0, to put his Pathbreaker Ebek on top of his library. Not wanting to swing his suddenly smaller creatures, Brian passes his turn and untaps when I untap thanks to his Seedborn Muse. During my main phase, I tap 4 lands to cast Hour of Reckoning to deal with the board. Brian responds with a spell in the stack by sacrificing his tokens and moving his counters around to put them on his creatures. He does this to save his creatures when he follows up with an Inspiring Call, and I've also got a trick up my sleeves as I cast Rootborn Defenses to save my board, populating the Elephant token and gaining another 3 life. Jeff is ultimately the only one affected by the board wipe, and I bring out Regal Force once the hour is resolved, gaining 5 life as it enters and drawing 6 cards from the Enter the Battlefield trigger, and then 1 extra from my on-cast. My library is getting awfully small at this point, but I play a Plains and I tap 2 lands to cast Seance before passing. Jeff untaps along with Brian, and on Jeff's upkeep, I exile my Karmic Guide with Seance, putting a token copy onto the field. I gain 2 life, and I bring back Sun Titan, gaining another 6 life, and Sun Titan brings back the Altar of Dementia. Jeff then drops a Command Tower for his turn, and casts a Mirror Entity. He then moves to combat, and swings everything at Brian. Tajik gets his Battalion trigger, and Jeff pays 2 mana to bring back Duplicant. He thinks about exiling one of my things, but with the Altar of Dementia, things probably won't work out for him. Jeff settles for a Seedborn Muse, which is frankly a kill-on-sight creature anyway. Jeff then pays 7 mana into the Mirror Entity's ability to make all of his creatures a 7/7 base. Brian responds to this trigger, removing 3 counters to make 3 Saproling tokens, before moving to his block step. He casts Harsh Sustenance to deal 6 to the Mirror Entity, and gaining 6 life. Brian then blocks with the Saprolings of 3 creatures coming at him on the ground, and before damage is done, sacrifices them to put 3+1/+1 counters on Ghave. We finally move to the damage step, and Brian takes 14 in the air from the Thopters. Unfortunately, because I'm bad at magic, I forget to exile the Karmic Guide token until early into Brian's turn. Brian casts a Slimefoot in his main phase, and I remember his Spore counter. I realize the Karmic Guide should be gone by this point, and Brian brings out the Ibek. Moving to combat, I cast Return to Dust on the Coat of Arms, and Brian passes. On my upkeep, I exile the Restoration Angel with Seance, creating a token copy of it. I gain 4 life as it enters, and I flicker my Regal Force, gaining another 5 as it enters, and drawing another 6 cards. I then drop Panharmonicon, which is still hot off the press as I drop a Phyrexian Processor. I put 40 life into the processor, and I then activate it to make a 40/40 token, gaining 80 life as it enters thanks to the Panharmonicon. I then activate Trostani, populating the token and gaining a further 80 life and another 40/40 token. I then bring out an Angel Finality, gaining 8 life as it enters, and exiling Brian's graveyard twice for good measure. I drop a Skullwinder and gain 6 more life, and pick Brian to return a card from his now doubly non-existent graveyard, while I bring back Rootboard Defenses. I play a Plains as my land for turn, and I then sacrifice the 2 Processor tokens to mill Jeff for 80 cards. I pass to Jeff, who can't draw, and loses the game. Brian untaps for his turn and gains a Spore counter on his Stallid. He casts a National's Altar, but knowing he's going to get milled out, scoops it up and we move on to the next game. Game review time. So I think there were a few points in this game where Jeff might be kicking himself for not having mana open or forgetting to use Pia and Kira Nalaar's ability, because the game would have probably fallen in his favor had I been taken out. I was very impressed with the amount of life I was able to gain back with Trostani, and it really kept me in the game, although I was very close to dying from Ghave killing me with commander damage. I've actually filmed quite a few games with Alesha moving forward from different people, so it's kinda cool to see what cards overlap and what cards are unique to each deck. This is one of the few things that I look forward to the most in EDH, as it really shows us what the player likes to build and how they build it based on the cards they include. There's one point in the game that I want to highlight, and this is when Brian cast Craterhoof Behemoth. He counted up how much damage he had, and then just blindly said that he'd killed 2 people. You can't just assume that you're going to be able to kill 2 people, since the amount of damage isn't spread evenly. In the end, Brian had to commit more resources to take out Jameson, who probably was the better target, since Jameson was going to mess with the boards and had probably more board wipes and bounces than I did. Unfortunately for Jameson, the triplets let him down this game, but considering how well he performed the last game, I'm glad to see that his deck is not just completely oppressive. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/mtgmudsta, and lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/mtgmudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.